Hi, I'm Davy. I'm awesome. Welcome to Davy's Awesome Wrestling, where I review wrestling-related things, all from the perspective of a fan, not an insider. So this week, I'm going to be reviewing a docu-series I've been meaning to get to for a while now. Just things keep coming up, but we're doing it this week. A docu-series that came out in 2022 and focuses on WWE's greatest villains. Narrated by John Cena. The docu-series WWE Evil. Episode 1, Hollywood Hulk Hogan. It's interesting that I finally got to this about a week after the passing of Hulk Hogan. Rest in peace. But it starts out with him being the biggest babyface that wrestling had ever seen at that point. But, like anything, when it goes on too long, it loses its steam. He had gone to WCW, it boosted them for a second, but quickly kind of died down because it was the same stuff we'd been watching for over 10 years in WWE at that point. So then it goes into how Eric Bischoff had come up with the idea for the NWO. He had signed Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. They were going to come in as outsiders, make it seem like they were doing a WWF versus WCW war at the time. But they needed a third member. Now, I will say, in this part of the docuseries, it gets a little inconsistent from the stories we've heard countless times. Most stories we hear, it's Eric Bischoff went to Hulk Hogan, said, I want you to be the third member. He turned it down. He had creative control. Felt that being a villain wouldn't help him. And then last minute, he calls Eric and says, who's going to be that third guy? Eric tells him it's going to be Sting. And he says, no, I'll do it. Because he did realize that him as a babyface had lost steam, he needed to do something to reinvent himself. This one, they made it seem like Eric Bischoff had never approached Hogan, that he just decided it was going to be Sting, and then Hogan came in and said, no, let it be me. With the fact that I've heard the other story more, I'm going to go with that one. But either way, Hogan was smart enough to realize his character had gotten stale. And when a character gets stale, you got to reinvent it. And man, did it work. I remember being a kid watching it unfold. It can't be Hogan. How could it be Hogan? How could the say your prayers, take your vitamins guy be the third in this heel faction? But it worked. Then it kind of went into talking about wrestler egos, not liking the NWO and whatnot, but I will say the NWO got played out because that had gotten stale and they didn't change it. Then talked about WCW closing and him going back to WWE, but ended up turning back into a babyface after his match with The Rock. Either way, it's a monumental thing to say that this guy was at one point the top babyface in all of wrestling and the top heel in all of wrestling. Episode 2, The Miz. The guy everybody loves to hate. Talk about him being on The Real World Back to New York. No one liked him, so he created The Miz, an obnoxious character that wanted to be a wrestler, but it got people watching, got people liking. Then him going on Tough Enough, then hosting SmackDown. People didn't like him as a host, but he played on that, made them hate him even more, so they brought him on the roster. And at first, the entire locker room didn't like him. Talked about how he would have to go change in the arena bathrooms. Till they started teaming him with John Morrison. They were Miz and Morrison. Then them splitting and him doing the thing that really kind of propelled him, coming out and challenging John Cena on events that he knew he would not be there, saying he had default wins over him. Either way, that got him to the next plateau. Winning the Money in the Bank, becoming the WWE Champion. Of course, mentioned the Miz girl, the one who clearly wasn't happy about it. Things he would do to piss people off, like imitating The Rock, but how this led to him being in the Marine sequels. And even went into how all this ended up boiling out and coming out on that infamous edition of Talking Smack when he went off on Daniel Bryan. His wife saying that that wasn't the character, that was him. Either way, clearly he deserved a spot in this docuseries because Miz is one of those, as a babyface, as a heel, you love to hate him. Episode 3, Sasha Banks. An episode they probably wish they could take back, considering not long after this she left WWE and became Mercedes Moné. But hey, why not? Talks about her growing up with a chip on her shoulder and becoming a fan of wrestling, to the point that she grew up and got trained joining Chaotic Wrestling. Then going to NXT and for a while just being kind of a plain character, nothing to her, until she developed The Boss. Went into her feud with Charlotte Flair that would come and go throughout her WWE career, forming the Four Horsewomen: Charlotte Flair, Sasha Banks, Bayley, and Becky Lynch. Winning the NXT Women's title. And TakeOver Brooklyn, which had the famous Bayley versus Sasha Banks championship match that stole the show. It was because of that at the next NXT event, they actually got to main event it. And from there it went on and on to the point it spilled out into the main roster. But then talking about her burnout and how she went to Japan to kind of rejuvenate her love for wrestling, learn another style, and all the way to her return, which is when she went from pink-haired Sasha Banks to blue-hair Sasha Banks. But it took her to the main event of WrestleMania. She's one of those that you gotta thank for women's wrestling being the way it is now. Episode 4, The Brothers of Destruction. Talk about The Undertaker and how he was in WCW as Mean Mark, and they felt he wasn't marketable and was never going to be marketable. They were very wrong. And Bruce Pritchard had come up with an idea for a character of The Undertaker, and saw Mean Mark, found out his contract was coming up, and said he'd be perfect. And going into how he created that character, the subtle things he would do that freak people out, like the eyes rolling into his head, and being paired with Paul Bearer, because they wanted to find something for Paul Bearer to do. Bruce Pritchard too busy to be brother love on the road with The Undertaker, and found out Paul Bearer was a licensed mortician, so it worked perfectly. And how he was basically like the unbeatable guy until Mankind came around, who I believe still has the record for most victories over The Undertaker. But then talking about Kane and how he came in to be a one-off, Undertaker's long-lost brother, turns out is still alive and they had a feud, but after that, Kane stays around. All the way to the point that instead of being rivals, they teamed up, became the Brothers of Destruction, an unstoppable tag team. And then going into all their changes, Kane taking off his mask, Undertaker becoming the American Badass, then later just going back to the Dead Man, which was a variation of both. What was kind of cool about this one is this was like a 2-in-1, because most of it wasn't really about the tag team, it just Kane and The Undertaker. Episode 5, Randy Orton. It was one of the top heels to ever grace WWE. Talk about his childhood, being bullied, his father always being on the road, him joining the Marines until he went AWOL and got himself kicked out, but then getting into wrestling. But very soon after he made his debut on the main stage, he got injured. But instead of going home and just nursing his injury, they started the RNN, where he would just come up and give updates. And this all led to Ric Flair and Triple H wanting him in Evolution, and how that not only elevated him, but he learned a lot. Went into his feud with Mick Foley and how that just took him to another level, made him more vicious. But then also got into something that almost derailed his career, the whole drug problems that he had. That he's basically self-destructive. Kind of twisted that whole self-destruction thing into the storyline of him having intermittent explosive disorder. But eventually kicking his drug habit, growing up, and just embracing the fact that he's just a natural heel, which he is. I'm predicting very soon he's going to go back to it. Episode 6, Stephanie McMahon. This one was very intriguing because I haven't seen that many documentaries at all about Stephanie McMahon. Normally when they talk about her, it's while they're talking about someone else, like Vince McMahon or Triple H. But this one was all about her. You know, growing up in the business, and then her first story, which at the time she was just on an internship, she was in college, but they came up with the idea of Vince being behind being kidnapped into the ministry to get at Stone Cold Steve Austin, which later turned into her turning on her father with the whole DX storyline, where she was supposed to marry Test, and they said anybody who came to ringside that wasn't family was going to get fired. And then Triple H came out, and it turned out he was family because he had tricked her into marrying him. A way that even when I was a kid, I was like, there's no way that's legal, but for the storyline purposes, it was. And went into her just embracing the character of being that spoiled little rich girl who can get whatever she wants because she has the power. Even in becoming the women's champion for a minute. Also the whole Raw versus SmackDown thing, her becoming a GM. This leading to her and Triple H actually getting married in real life. And went into a lot of the sibling rivalry of her and Shane McMahon. Just all around good stuff. It makes me wish that they would do a full documentary just on Stephanie McMahon. Because as time went on, interesting character. Episode 7, Ric Flair. I hate to say it, but whereas the last one was intriguing because I haven't seen that much about Stephanie McMahon, the Ric Flair one, I've seen so many things about Ric Flair. I mean, I get it, he's one of the biggest stars ever, but it went into his childhood, being adopted, being a wild kid, getting into wrestling, the plane crash. This led to him becoming the Nature Boy, which is what made him take off. His feud with Dusty Rhodes, creating the Four Horsemen, going to WWF and becoming the champion, going into how it really wasn't a character, this was really him, spending way too much money, partying way too much. him going back to WCW, losing his confidence, going back to WWE, getting his confidence back after forming Evolution with Triple H. And then he even went into his retirement match, the first one, against Shawn Michaels that didn't last very long at all. It was the last time he wrestled in WWE, but he's wrestled quite a bit since then. And then I guess what would make this a little different than some of his other documentaries or his book is it kind of went into the legacy continuing with Charlotte Flair. But ultimately, most of this was just very redundant. Then number 8, another one we haven't had too much on though, Roman Reigns. He played football and wasn't really going after a wrestling career, more a football career. Was even signed with the Vikings, but then got diagnosed with leukemia, which, taking time off for that, ended his football career. But after that, got into wrestling, went to FCW, eventually got called up to the main stage in The Shield, and how he was being pushed as the top babyface. But fans weren't buying it. He was getting booed relentlessly. But it started to turn around when he came out and announced that his leukemia was back. He was going to have to forfeit the title over it. But then he beat cancer, came back, and very quickly was getting booed again. Which all went until COVID, when he had to take time off because with COVID and everything being so uncertain what was going on, and him being a cancer survivor, he needed to take time off and make sure he was going to be okay. But then he came back at SummerSlam with a new attitude. Now he was going to be a heel. It was what started the whole tribal chief thing, which, as we know, has led to him being the top heel in the company. I will say the only thing I kind of didn't like about it is they were saying how it was just his character wasn't being accepted, or going, why weren't people accepting him as the face of the company? Well, because you don't tell the fans who the face of the company is. They tell you who the face of the company is. And then you go with it. I remember around that time, we didn't like him being pushed down our throats. But I think part of it was just that. He was a natural heel. We could tell that this was a guy who was not the squeaky clean white meat babyface that they were trying to portray him as, but that this guy had an edge. It almost reminds me of his cousin The Rock. When he first came in as Rocky Maivia, people didn't like it, didn't buy it. When he became The Rock, okay, now we believe this. So, the docu-series Evil overall is honestly a very great documentary. It's one of my favorites. I like the uniqueness that they are focusing on a specific type of person, the heels. Some of it, yeah, very redundant. Like I said, Ric Flair, the Hollywood Hogan thing. Nothing you haven't heard before. But The Miz, I haven't seen a lot of documentaries about him. Sasha Banks, seen a couple, but like Stephanie McMahon and Roman Reigns, again, don't see much of that. So that was really cool. So ultimately, it's been a couple years, but docuseries take a while. I do hope that eventually they come out with a season 2 of WWE Evil, because there's definitely a lot more heels they could do stories on. But either way, if you have Peacock and you've yet to check out WWE Evil, if you're a big wrestling fan like I am, then you owe yourself to go check out WWE Evil. It's a great docuseries. So there you have it. That's my wrestling review this week. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, hit the little bell so you get notifications when I post the videos. And leave a comment I can respond to in my next comment corner. Tell me what you thought of WWE Evil. Tell me if season 2 comes out, some characters you're hoping to see. Love you guys.